Hello everybody, we are here in Austin, Texas for Consensus 2022 by CoinDesk, the festival for the decentralized world. And today I have with me David Shin, who is the head of global adoption for Klaytn Foundation. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. So how's the event been so far?
It's been pretty busy, lots of meetings. It's been pretty good from a participation standpoint for those of the attendees who wanted to kind of meet us and speak to us. So we've seen a lot of users, developers, partners come and see us at our booth. So it's been a pretty good conference so far.
Excellent. And there have been some wonderful projects on display, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think just in general, it doesn't really feel like a winter. A lot of good projects coming in. There's still capital flowing, so it's really good to see.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, David, tell us a little bit about what is Klaytn Foundation all about? When was it founded? Who are the team members? Can you give us a little insight into it?
Sure. To explain that, I have to explain how Klaytn came about first as well. Klaytn is now South Korea's largest Web3 company. For those who are listening and watching, they should not be sure. Now it's the WeChat of Korea. It's 95% of the population of Korea is on a chat application. In 2019, they rolled out their own version of blockchain on Klaytn, which is EVM fork. So it's fully EVM compatible. They had made some modifications, added some bells and whistles, so it's different than Ethereum in that regard. The primary difference being that it is proof of stake consensus algorithm, not proof of work. We've also added some bells and whistles to make it really fast and really cheap. So I believe we're the cheapest EVM chain out there. We have 1 second finality, and at the moment there's about 4,000 TPS. We're pushing that to 10,000 by the end of the year. Now, to go back to the foundation, this foundation wasn't set up until last year.
Okay.
Primarily because from 2019, as I explained, when Klaytn went live with the endorsement and backing of Kakao Group, to 2021, when the foundation was set up, Klaytn was primarily driven by a group called GroundX, which was a subsidiary set up to create Klaytn and push Klaytn. So a lot of that work from 2019 to 2021 was done in Korea, and so Klaytn is very, the adoption levels are super high in Korea, liquidity is super high in Korea, but there's really nothing going on outside of Korea, which is why they brought me in last year. So I was the head of Tesla's Asia when one of the co-founders of Kakao asked me to join and start pushing the global expansion strategy, which is when we came into Singapore, set up a new entity, which was the Klaytn Foundation, to then use that entity to now grow outwards.
Okay. So what are your products, or what are you actually working on? What is Klaytn Foundation working on?
Sure. Klaytn Foundation primarily is really focused in on adoption at a very high level, so I'll break that down for you. Adoption meaning developer adoption, user adoption, partnership adoption, and also investors.
Okay.
So we look at these 4 channels. We try and create programs and funding through the foundation to enable and activate some of this adoption in those 4 channels. I think the 2 that are worth probably highlighting the most is we have 2 funding vehicles, one called the KGF, which stands for the Klaytn Growth Fund, and one called KIR, which is the Klaytn Growth Reserve. Those sit within the foundation, and they act as sort of grants fund push out for projects to create job creation, as well as to push out to open source developers, incentivize them to create better infrastructure for our network. So that's what KIR does. KGF is grant for projects. So we use those 2 vehicles to really try and enhance the adoption. We also have a separate investment team that also looks at strategic investments. But that's more for-profit versus the KGF being not-for-profit, just grant money, as well as a KIR. So these are the different channels that we use.
And you have your own
are other smaller layer one chains like Silica at some point. Really, they're not making as much of a global push, and the adoption rates aren't as high in Asia for Silica as they are with Klaytn.
Okay.
So we're doing a lot to try and become that Asia layer one player.
Okay.
And that's why we're here at Consensus, to let everyone know that here in the US.
Okay.
But yeah, ultimately I think for us to look at the current situation, especially after the Terra Luna event that happened, and try and take advantage and double down, that's really our goal. That's why we're here. And so for anyone watching, if you have any interest, take a look at what we're doing. There's a lot of stuff online, but really we're here to try to
okay. So you're the only one in Asia that's on layer one.
We're the only layer one in Asia, yeah. I mean, as I said, there are, Silica is one, but again, they're not as active as we are in trying to grow globally. Correct.
Okay. Wow. And just so projects can come and build on your ecosystem.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So we're no different than Polygon, Solana, Binance Chain. Avalanche, Ethereum. So, yeah, we're a layer one. We look at, as I said, we use the two different active channels that we have to try and incentivize projects to come and build on our chain, or developers to come and make improvements in our infrastructure. We also look for, as I mentioned, strategic investments to grow the ecosystem abroad. And so we have a commercial entity that does that separately, Trust. So Trust is another entity outside of the Klaytn Foundation. One is for-profit, one is not-for-profit. So for the for-profit entity, Trust, that is where we use balance sheet to try and invest in strategic investments outside of the within blockchain.
That's cool. So there's a lot happening at Klaytn Foundation.
There is, yeah, a lot happening, yeah.
Wonderful. I want to ask you about, I ask this to everyone. What do you think about the regulations? What the regulatory authorities need to do? Because there seems to be a huge gap over there, and it's getting challenging for projects. So what do you think the regulations should do so that it becomes easier for projects to work on this ecosystem? Do you think
So I think that's the fundamental thing that has to change, is the actual skill sets that sit at the decision-making level, or at least the research level of the regulators, so that they have a better understanding of how the tech works. It feels like it's getting better over the last 5 years, but I think we're still pretty far off. So that's the near-term changes that I think are overall current regulatory perspective. I think it's necessary that we have regulation, especially in areas where, areas like DeFi, where investors are not just corporate investors, but also retail investors. The retail investors in particular need a layer of protection. So I think that's important. And then lastly, just in the future of regulation, I would love to see now as a regulator, where people who have a certain amount of credibility and experience stake that experience into the DAO and focus on financial regulation or technological regulation.
I think the key is for them to understand technology
discussion these days about the idea of decentralized societies, what they're calling decel. And Cal's been talking a lot about this token that he's backing, that's being introduced, called soul-bound tokens, to represent sort of social credibility, if you will, right? I also have a very strong opinion about what I call reputation tokens and how they can be integrated to decentralized societies. So if you think about how Facebook or any social media channel that's really popular today, Twitter, or even LinkedIn, or any of these things, Instagram, there is no governance around or policing around social media.
Right.
And this is an extremely toxic environment at times. And the answer to police or governance is not for Twitter or Facebook to create censorship. That's not the right answer. So then the idea of having decentralized societies by self-policing through what I call reputation tokens and assigning reputation tokens as society online monitors people's behavior, that could be an interesting way of solving the problem of having centralized organizations censor monitoring. So an example of this is, if you think about the like and dislike function on Facebook specifically, if those were represented by reputation tokens, green being a positive, red being a negative, and yellow being a warning, just like in soccer or football, right? That's how referees monitor and sort of govern behavior on soccer. And that concept, at a very high level, were introduced into social media. And so if people are behaving badly, society is self-policing, throwing a lot of red tokens for bad behavior, and a lot of green tokens for good behavior, and some yellow that warn people, but if they continue the bad behavior, the yellow becomes red. And through this, then you can create a certain level of trust, right? Because a lot of people in the platform who don't know each other are having common values and beliefs, and assigning those values and beliefs to reputation tokens, which could also then tie into things like applying for credit cards.
Wow, that's exciting, and that's a nice analogy.
Yeah, well, it's necessary. I think, I've got kids, and when I think about my 15-year-old being online, there's nothing I can do to monitor that.
Right.
At school, at least he has teachers and staff. Right? And if he's out walking around the shopping malls and, him and his friends are behaving badly, there'll be adults there to monitor, so to speak, or govern that. But online, because you don't know how old people are, you don't know where they are, who they are. It's very difficult. So I think this idea is very important to think about, and hopefully there will be a project or a team that comes up with more solutions around this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it and look at the future as well.
Correct.
Well, thank you so much, David, for taking the time to talk to us, and we wish you all the best at Klaytn Foundation.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.